This year marks America's 250th birthday. It has been 250 years since the signing of the Declaration that put to paper our grievances with England and our aspirations as a budding nation. But if you look around, there are a lot of people who don't seem like they're in the mood for a celebration. Survey after survey laments how divided America is, how people are alarmed about their neighbors and their opinions, how they're cutting off family members because of political disagreements. For a nation that prides itself on its endurance and its ability to overcome, we really seem to be fighting the tide at the moment. So what can we do about it? How can we leverage this moment when we're focused on the nation and its America 250 year to begin to bridge some of those divides? How do we carry forward the momentum of the semi-quincentennial into the coming years so that we don't let this just be a blip with some patriotic birthday cake before we drift back to our old ways? That is the question behind Stand Together's Be the People effort, which we're going to explore here today. And I'm so excited to have Sarah Cross, Senior Vice President at Stand Together, here with me today. She is tasked with ensuring the 250th anniversary of America's founding doesn't go to waste and is instead an opportunity to get all Americans engaged in civic life. She's a longtime friend, a former colleague of mine, and has spent many years working on free speech issues and cross-ideology dialogue. Sarah, great to see you.
Thanks for having me. Just don't try to make me say semi-quincentennial.
Look,
More
there you
times
go.
than I just
Success.
did. That's the only
Success.
one I got.
That's all I get.
Only one I get.
Okay, so ground us in some facts. What is the survey, what does the data actually say about how divided or not divided we actually are? Because all we hear about is how divided we are. But how true is that?
I think this is the best news of the whole conversation. We're not nearly as divided as we seem. I'm pulling this from data from More in Common, groups like Populous. That was a think tank started by a neuroscientist named Todd Rose, spun out of Harvard. They do work on American private opinion, which is so often different than what people will say aloud publicly because of this highly divided, polarized, censorious environment that we're in. And what that research just keeps finding again and again is that most of the division is coming from these tiny factions on either ideological extreme that only represent at most 13-14% of the country. Then the vast majority of Americans you could think of as falling in the exhausted majority in the middle.
And the 13-14%, that's kind of split between both sides too, right? So really it's like 7% of each side, 5-7%.
Well, and this is where it gets even more promising. That's where the sides start to fade away and you start to see some real alignment around the principles that we're celebrating in this 250th year, real alignment around the ideals best articulated in the Declaration of Independence. I'm talking about mass agreement around the value and importance of individual rights and individual liberties. I'm talking about agreement around even what we reject. Americans across the ideological spectrum actually reject equal outcomes as a goal and adhere to a commitment to equal rights. Again, from Populous, that think tank I just mentioned, I'd encourage everyone to check out the American Aspirations Index and the Success Index, the first of which found mass agreement on 8 of the 10 issues when Americans were asked what they aspire to for the future of the country, and mass agreement in the latter piece of research on how Americans define their American dream. Americans across all demographics put the idea of contribution, rolling up our sleeves together in community to build a better future as a critical part of their American dream and something that isn't as fulfilled as they would like to see. So you roll all of that up together, we've got more in common than what divides us. We share the core ideals of the Declaration of Independence in common, and we want to work together to apply those ideas.
What is that aspiration? Is it just working together? Is it just being friends? Or is there what is that end game for America that so many people seem to agree on?
It's solving problems. It's actually improving communities. And we can get into this more in conversation. You mentioned I've got a background in free speech and bridging divides. What we kept finding in our philanthropy and support of that work is that you only get so far when you just promote dialogue across lines of difference. What really works and what builds lasting and sticky bridges across those divides is a commitment to a common goal and the shared work of building a better future towards that goal.
So chicken and egg problem, because I want to get into what Be the
Yeah,
People
yeah, yeah.
is, but I also want to explore why Stand Together cares. So maybe we can match those together. Give us the big picture description of what Be the People is. We got your fancy hat here describing the effort. So tell us what it is, and then want to get into why does Stand Together care about this? And you may even have to say a little bit about what Stand Together is.
Yeah, maybe I start there actually, because part of why Stand Together was so excited to create Be the People is because this is a chance to really shift culture towards the ideals that we were founded upon and that we exist to advance. I'm talking about a belief in everyone's inherent dignity, the idea that everyone has something to contribute to the future of the country, and the idea of mutual benefit, that we make progress, that we're all better off when we work to improve the lives of others. That idea of contribution and mutual benefit, the idea that everybody matters to the future, is the idea behind Be the People. So you take that conversation we just had about the research, and you can start to see an opportunity that exists uniquely in this moment that gave rise to the initiative. So if majorities of Americans actually want this thing and believe in this thing, they just think that no one else wants it, and our problem is this big collective lie that we're living in, then what you need is a mass revelation of the true story of us. This reveal that is the platform of Be the People, that says what it means to be American in a year when we're all asking the question what it means to be American is to contribute, is to build a better future. Doesn't mean we don't have problems, but what we do as Americans is we roll up our sleeves together and we fix those problems. So Be the People is a platform to connect the millions of Americans who are contributing and want to contribute with the opportunities, the causes, the organizations, the leaders in community to do so. It's part storytelling campaign. It's part incredible coalition, which we can get into later, of organizations and individuals all committed to that ideal. And it's undergirded now and over the next 10 years as we build it by an ecosystem of digital tools, technology, content, curricula that will actually knit people together between those opportunities and needs.
All right, let me ask the cynical question. That work, a lot of that work's happening, right? I mean, it's the thing that's not getting appreciated, you know. So is this a Ferris Bueller moment? Is Stand Together just jumping in front of the parade, or like what is the value add here? And I presume there's some kind of magnifying capability there. But if the work's already happening, what are you bringing to the table?
No, I'm glad you asked that question, because that really is kind of the core goal, is not to attempt to compete with the great organizational work that's happening out there already in communities, but really to define heroism and patriotism on those terms, to create a national platform that elevates the stories that are otherwise going unheard or are not breaking through with enough velocity and enough reach to drown out the super loud voices that are coming from those ideological extremes that we talked about. So one of the many things that gave birth to this initiative was, and you know, the Stand Together has been doing work to support community leaders for decades. There are so many great organizations out there that are telling the story, that are doing this work, but they don't have access to best-in-class creative talent. They don't have access on their own to the level of reach needed to tell a story on this scale and with this volume. And what we kept hearing from them again and again is they're not sufficiently connected to each other. They feel alone in their work in communities or on the national stage, and they want to be learning from and bolstered by others across sectors outside of their space who are committed to the same ideals. So at the heart of Be the People is that partnership platform, the National Leadership Council of these organizations, these individual leaders in culture who are bonding together to sing from the same songbook at the same time.
Talk a little bit more about how you get the leaders to actually work together. So this is an issue, right? So Independent Institute out in California has a terrific Beyond Homelessness initiative. And one of the things I know we've had them on the show and talked to them a lot about the work they're doing. And they talk about how it's San Francisco, right? There's so many groups working in the homeless space and poverty space out there, but none of them talk to each other. Yeah. And that's a microcosm of the rest of the country, right? Just as you say. Yes. And that's a true across issues. I mean, we're in this liberty movement space. We talk to each other all the time, right? But it's different. Yeah. These people are on the ground. They're helping people
Yep.
day to day, and that's an all day, every day kind of job. So I can
Yep.
understand how they get
Yep.
disconnected. How do you actually get them to take 10 minutes out of their
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
use a platform to get them connected, to actually take the appreciation for what somebody else is doing?
Well, I'll answer that in a couple ways. First, at the national level, and then give an example of how that can manifest locally. Because I think a lot of that work is the work to be done over the next 10 years once we launch this platform and kind of shatter the lie that I mentioned. So at the national level, we've got groups in this coalition like Giving Tuesday and Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity. These organizations that have both nationally recognizable brands, but also a footprint in communities around the country. 85% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Goodwill. There's 4-H. There are businesses like Walmart involved. And then you couple that with leaders in entertainment, arts, and culture who have these incredible platforms and audiences already following them. Think NFL athletes like Demario Davis. Think leagues like the NBA. Think best-in-class filmmakers like Brian Grazer and Imagine Entertainment. They're all coming together. The pretty simple value prop that's bringing them into community with each other. You have the storytellers who are saying, hey, I want the stories from communities on the ground. And then you've got the ground game organization saying, I've got an embarrassment of riches and stories of impact, but I don't have platforms to get them out there. There's going to be all kinds of work to better connect them with each other and do that amplification. But for now, Be the People is that opportunity. So 2 quick examples from within the National Leadership Council and then the local one. Giving Tuesday. Most people know Giving Tuesday as the hashtag that happens right after Thanksgiving, where you're called to go be generous in your donations after you've gorged yourself on turkey and Black Friday deals. They already reach 40 million Americans a year with that campaign. They've already got community leaders in 2/3 of counties across the country who are hungry to do more and who are part of this movement in a sustained way. They see a path over the next 5 years to reaching 100 million Americans a year and ultimately having sustained community leadership in every county in the country. What they lack is a platform with enough, frankly, marketing reach to claim another day on the calendar, to create another American ritual. That's part of what we're going to help them do. We're supporting their work to launch Together Tuesday, which is going to create a summertime kind of civic summer ritual around contributing.
Or volunteer based.
Yeah. But across the spectrum of volunteering, not just serving in your soup kitchen, but mentoring and building and starting businesses, all of the great things that we can do together. It is in partnership with Be the People and the amplification from all of those groups who are coming together to promote their work that they can achieve that reach and broaden the kind of contribution that they're bringing to bear. Then you think about the way this can manifest locally. And we've started some early experiments, and they're exactly that. They're experiments, but it gets to the kind of cohesion question that you asked. So we brought together and the NBA and their NBA Cares program with Habitat for Humanity. They put on under the banner of Be the People who rebuild LA after the wildfires. Paired them up with local influencers that we sourced and spotted who have reach and credibility in the LA area, really, really locally and authentically, and who have real connections to the crisis, to the problem. Their lives were personally affected by the wildfires. When you brought them together, they were all able to get further faster than they otherwise would have. Habitat put up hundreds more walls than they otherwise would have to build the homes. They saw a boost in volunteerism. Be the People saw tremendous followership and got incredible stories after that. And then coming out of it, what you get, and we've seen this in each of the towns where we've tried a model like this, the groups go, oh my God, we have to do this kind of work together more often. We should have been talking to each other long before now. Let's do this again and again and again and again.
So how do you avoid and I want to come back to what Stand Together is, because there's certainly plenty of people who, heck, I used to work under what is now Stand Together.
I'm going to put you to the test and ask you to define it, and then I'll see what I can improve upon.
I would not do it. But how do you avoid the coding, the left-right coding, right? So Stand Together, viewed as a Charles Koch thing, therefore of the right. You have other fun. I mean, you mentioned Imagine Entertainment. You got and MacArthur Foundation,
Yep.
MBA. These are not things that people, if they there's more of a liberal valence probably to them, and then like Goodwill and some of these others. Some people, depending on your lens, But how do you avoid that political valence covering it all and creating the divide on the front end? Because it sounds like once people are in the room together, you get to a better spot. But you got to get them there.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question because it was that was really the most important imperative for creating that coalition. Our goal was to not be bipartisan, but be nonpartisan. This whole thing is about creating a sense of empowerment and agency for people to feel within communities. You matter. Your contribution makes a difference in the future of the country. Civil society is a critical, we think, the most important part of what drives progress in society. It's not, solutions don't come top down from government. They come from leaders within communities. So the whole coalition was built to be apolitical and elevate those voices. And then to be diverse in every sense of the word. I don't just mean observable diversity. I mean everything from socioeconomic diversity, ideological diversity, rural, urban spread, every faith, race, and creed. The whole thing needed to feel like an invitation to that 85% of Americans in that exhausted majority, that together this constellation of brands and organizations has the reach to pay that off and the standing when they stand together to show the power of what communities can accomplish. I think, this coalition will continue to grow over time. We very deliberately brought together foundations across the ideological spectrum. You mentioned a couple. That was very much by design. It's by design that we're working with organizations like Goodwill and 4-H that carry no political valence whatsoever. And, you didn't ask this, but it's a question that I get a lot. This is also a choice because of how we want to be positioned in this moment in the 250th year. There are competing narratives from either of the extremes. There are platforms, national platforms through Congress and the administration and the government who are telling a story of the role that they see government playing in the future of the country. But we wanted to make sure that the civil society voice came together and had a part of that conversation, not just now, but for the next 10 years.
All right. So let's put a pin on that because I keep teasing we're going to define Stand Together. So let's define Stand Together, and then I want to come back to the next 10 years and also some of these competing voices.
Yeah.
But Stand Together, how do you define it? How should people think about it?
I was only half kidding about making you go first. We have worked together for years.
We have. So
you would
I think
have
the first
defined
time,
it, and then I'll come.
First time we worked together, I was an employee of Coke Company's public sector. I think you were Coke Foundation. I think you eventually joined us under the Freedom Partners banner. Then I left and went to Donors Trust in 2014. The organization changed names twice since then. And now it is Stand Together. And it has merged Charles Koch Institute, pieces of the foundation, the seminar network that I was a part of, and new things on top of all of that. And it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that you do. So
I kind of wanted you to go through that.
to make the map.
Well, yeah, exactly. You started painting the org chart a little bit. No, so Stand Together is organized as a philanthropic community, all dedicated to that North Star vision that I mentioned, this idea that everyone has something to contribute and that we all lead better, more fulfilling lives when we're living in service to others or to create value for others. We exist as a philanthropic community to get rid of the barriers between those people and their full potential, between them and that contribution in communities. So we're a constellation of investment organizations, and I say organizations because some of them are philanthropic and charitable. Some of them are for-profit. Sometimes the best, most effective way to drive social change is to invest in good businesses that are doing work for good profit. We are a community of, at any given time, more than 500 business leaders and individuals who are investing in that vision and committing to the organizations that we support. And then we're a suite of horizontal shared services, everything from communications and analytics to development that ensure that we're equipped to come alongside a social entrepreneur, somebody with a solution to a problem, and can bring whatever kind of resources and capabilities to bear necessary to scale that solution. I could go deeper into the issue areas that we're focused on. They change. We've as classical liberals at our core, there are some principles that we are always dedicated to advancing. The actual individual issues that we use to direct and focus our resources change dynamically in the face of a changing world.
Okay, so let's pull the pen out and come back to this landscape of different groups out there, and also just the time horizon, right? So this is the 250th year. You only get one 250th, right?
Yeah.
And really, it seems to me so much momentum is building towards just a little over 2 months, or no, like a month and a half from now.
I was going to say, we're talking in weeks at this point. So if you see the
by the time
bags
this airs, I think we're going to drop this on June 9th. Like, it's less than a month away till we get to the 4th, the big celebration, the big kahuna, which is very nicely on a Saturday this year. It's very convenient, the whole weekend. But so all this momentum, you have America 250, which has been around for a long time. All the states have their 250 commissions. The Trump administration has its Freedom 250 initiative with all kinds of things, some of it related, some of it's doing its own thing. And then you have all these different groups out there building curricula or building programs and projects around it. Frankly, it's hard. I mean, we at Donors Trust have tried to parse some of this, and we've tried to look at this and we were like, we're going to make a web page and show all this. And I think we've gotten a little stymied in just doing that. It's too much. And it also feels like it's not enough. So how do you make sense of that landscape? And then where does Be the People fit into it?
So I think first thing to emphasize is that right from the get-go, Be the People was always designed as a long-term culture-shifting effort. We always saw the 250th as a key inflection point, that moment we mentioned up top where everyone's asking the question what it means to be American, which offers us a moment of focus that is otherwise really hard to achieve, even with all the paid media dollars in the world. Quick tangent. I mean, the last time really as a country where we had a conversation about who we are at the same time was after 9/11. It's usually a thing we do in reaction to a tragedy that you can't predict. Very rarely is it something that you can look ahead to and see coming and plan for. So we wanted to harness that moment to be something that pulled so many of these organizations together who we knew were going to be doing things for the 250th anyways, to tell the same story at the same time in a breakthrough way. But as I mentioned, the beating heart of the work is in the partnerships, the community organizations, the people who are out there in culture telling the stories. The strategy over the 10-year period is built as a flywheel, a virtuous cycle between the stories and the action on the ground. The more that we tell this story of the American spirit and it's, the idea that it's alive and well as an invitation to others, the more people are going to take action in communities. The more they take action in communities, the more stories we have, and it churns from there. I think the other piece to call out with the long-term horizon in mind is the investment in the digital ecosystem of tools to enable this. There's, I think, a moment to, in so many ways, rebuild our civic infrastructure, rebuild or innovate and build from scratch with the incredible new technologies out there today, the tools that it takes to connect somebody's interests and passions with the groups and causes that need them. So I hope we get the chance to come back to that. But on the question about the landscape, we could go deep in all the scuttlebutt that's been pretty heavily reported across the Wall Street Journal, Times, every paper out there. I'd sum it all up by saying the governmental efforts around the 250th, the kind of thing that led to the celebration that many people saw back during the bicentennial and led to the creation of a lot of content and programs and ideas that are still enduring today. we probably both know Schoolhouse Rock. That came out of the bicentennial era. I think there were the aspirations to build something lasting from this, but there were a lot of kind of starts and stops in the 10-year lead up to this movement, and the national platforms weren't, in many cases, able to get off the ground, and weren't always collaborative with each other, which to us created a vacuum and an opportunity. There are great programs being put out there, many of them by state leaders who stepped up to fill that void.
And great celebrations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the celebration aspect, I think, will be celebrated. It's this endurance. That's the question.
You just said it, and I should have led with that. It's that there will be lovely moments on and around the 4th, and at the end of the day, someone's got to invest in the impact sustaining for the years afterwards, and that's where we saw an opportunity. We're built to do long term.
The long term thing is, and I've heard several leaders, both of us know Victoria Hughes, who's been involved in this America 250. I know she's expressed concern about the long term and just wanting it, not even concern, just how do you make this keep going? And we've been thinking a lot about that at Donors Trust, and I'm going to announce some things we're trying to do on that. But this is a huge effort. It's a 10-year effort. How do you make sure the energy doesn't flag? Right? I mean, we just said, come July 5th, people are going to be like, well, that was fine. I got to drive back from the beach and clean up these fireworks and it's all done. Yeah. By December 31st, the calendar flips to next year. Then it's the 251st. Nobody cares. How in 2029 and 2030 and 2031, how this effort's still going, how do you keep that energy up?
I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. One, I'm going to selfishly take the opportunity to talk about how we'll measure success, because I think part of the answer to that is we're going to learn as we go. And so much of what we're building on the front end of this is the actual learning apparatus to keep our finger on the pulse of what Americans demand and want and need, and to be positioned as a platform to go meet those needs. So I'll come back to that. But another way is through the exciting work of the individual organizations themselves. So another example from the Stand Together universe organization you guys might be aware of, it's called Care Portal. It's
my church is involved in that.
Yeah. Oh, great. I'm passionate about their work. They help kids in situations like what I grew up with. They're a platform, for those who aren't familiar with it, that connect social workers with the real needs that families have, needs that, if not met, lead to family separations and terrible outcomes, more kids entering the foster care system than anyone thinks is ideal. Pairing those needs with churches, people in churches and faith institutions, across the community who want to help. They just don't know that need exists. Care Portal sees an opportunity, thanks to the platform and amplification of partnership with Be the People, to go from serving 250,000 families a year to serving 1 million families a year. And we'll hold ourselves accountable to helping to deliver that value. So part of how you sustain the momentum is to look at that and to keep coming back and telling that story over time. Okay, have we gone from reaching 250,000 to 1 million a year? It's 1 million real lives with incredible stories in each of them, and we will continuously tell those stories. I'll pause there, but I'd love to go into the measurement piece and kind of learning on that.
Measurement. One of my favorite Charles Koch quotes is, the future is unknown and unknowable. And so when you got 10 years to deal with, there's a lot of unknown and unknowable out there.
No, exactly. And you grew up in this environment too. We would never attempt to make or engineer on the front end a 10-year plan. We know it's going to change. We know our first couple years of being in community with this many millions of Americans at a time is going to teach us something. And what we build from here is going to be based on those learnings. So what we've designed is, a couple instruments to know whether or not we're getting there. Partnering with Gallup to tell longitudinally over that 10-year time horizon, are we actually increasing the American spirit? Do more Americans think that we're equipped to solve our own problems? We're aiming to reverse this Pew stat that still keeps me up at night. It's been tracked for decades, but for the first time in the last 5 years, found that fewer than half of Americans believe that we can solve our own problems anymore. When you don't think we can solve our own problems, you're a whole lot more susceptible to ugly ideas from top-down forces.
Yeah, who are they? Think it is going to solve them.
Yeah, no,
because there's still problems. You still got to solve them.
They're still there. Somebody's got to do it. So we'll measure our progress against that and keep the momentum going that way. And I want to come back to this digital ecosystem piece. forgive the quick tangent here, but I think it's a good story. Right now, if you want to contribute, this is not a failing of any one organization, just no one's invested in this technology. I have to go Google the charities. I can put in my zip code and get a list of registered C3s and charities in my area, but then I've got to do the legwork to say which of these align to my interests, which of them are in good standing, which of them have needs that have anything to do with what I have to offer. And that's a lot of legwork for busy Americans. So we can create and be the people as a web platform will be that matching function. And this is where
So like I can say, I want to help babies 0 to 2 who are in crisis.
And here's a great, or say
within 10 miles of my zip code.
Eventually, yes. For now, it might look like I want to help children in need. Here's a great organization like Care Portal, some stories of the work that they're doing and how you can help. What kind of contribution are they looking for? The story piece comes from, a partner in our universe who told us the story of what it meant to him to start Stripe, the payment processing platform. Stripe transformed the entrepreneurship landscape. It suddenly made it easier for people to start businesses. They no longer needed to go figure out how to do all these highly technical things that most people don't know how to do. That's a good in and of itself, and it transformed a critical sector in civil society. But the most powerful thing to come out of that was this first line view into what businesses were people starting and why, what was succeeding or not, what are American consumers demanding that entrepreneurs are trying to meet. If you're an investor, that's invaluable information about American interests and needs. I think the Be the People platform over that 10-year time horizon can be a similar engine of transformation and progress in the social sector. I think the most valuable thing that this platform is going to do is to learn in a very direct, hyper-local way what problems are Americans passionate about solving? Who are they working with to do it? Where are they having a good experience with that? Where are they not having their needs met? And what does that mean about gaps in the landscape that we as philanthropists can create innovative mechanisms to address?
Well, and I think that storytelling piece is so important and going to be so important because one of my soapbox things that I yell about is I feel so many people, we've seen this decline in charitable giving across the board.
Right.
It's just kind of slowly inching down every year. And also behind the data, you see, okay, well, it's not collapsing, but that's because the big donors are giving more and the small donors are literally disappearing.
Right.
And my working theory on that is just people feel that they can't, if all they've got is $100 or $10 they just feel it's not going to move the needle.
Yep.
And well, they got needs too. And they're their own charity. They're going to deal with it.
Yep.
And they're going to let Bezos or Gates or whoever else or Charles Koch go and spend that money, and they're going to spend a lot more. And those donors do. They step up. So it actually is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you can tell the story and show this $25 on Care Portal saved this kid, and here's the woman who looks just like you, and why she did it. Is that kind of the idea of the storytelling piece?
Yeah, exactly. We're already finding thousands of them. That's part of the ask to our partners. Go find those stories and bring them in our direction, and we'll invest the creative resources it takes to bring those to the masses through social and through these incredible, influential people who are on the council with us.
Okay, but here's the cynic again.
Go.
that people flock like moths to a flame to the bad news.
Yep.
You actually have to change some cultural resonance, cultural muscle memory for people to actually seek out the good news and want to pause briefly in their Instagram feed to actually hear the happy story instead of just the person complaining about how they got burned at Starbucks or whatever their complaint of the day, national issue or personal issue is. How do you do that?
I keep going back to the National Leadership Council. A huge part of that is through trusted and beloved messengers. When it's your favorite NFL athlete who's sharing that story, you listen. We've seen that Stand Together. There are several individual NFL athletes who are participating in Be the People, and Stand Together has a partnership with the NFL through My Cause, My Cleats. And when the stories come out from those athletes about the organizations that were supported, it's just the response is tremendous, and the growth in followership and frankly, just the relief from people when they see this as an antidote to what they're absolutely sick of in their feeds currently. It's early days in Be the People, but even what we're finding so far is showing more of that trend. Tremendous. I mean, we're that Habitat NBA story, the level of growth that we didn't put much in the way of paid dollars behind yet. We'll eventually put paid dollars behind the social push on these stories. I mean, just truly, I'm taking a lot of credibility from the incredible brand developers and creatives who have helped us build this platform. But we just kept hearing this is absolutely unheard of organic growth and interaction with the platform. I'm not talking bots. We're talking about people who are getting on there and talking to the social entrepreneurs, talking back to the platform and just saying again and again, this is what we're hungry for. This is what we need. If I can click on this and watch this for 15 seconds and change my algorithm, I feel like I've been empowered to do something, even a small thing that changes how I relate to the world. And the post-testing is really exciting. The degree to which people say that they feel empowered to go make a difference after viewing just one or two pieces of content like that.
Okay, so two final questions to land the plane. So one, talk to us about what we are going to see. I know the effort kind of formally launched earlier in the year, but you've got some stuff coming up in the near term. Where are people going to see Be the People out in the world?
And I don't want to spoil all of this. I'm pretty sure this podcast will actually play right as this is about to enter into the world. So everybody listening here is going to get a little bit of a sneak peek, and I'll ask all of your followers to keep it to themselves for maybe 1 week after they hear this. So, as you would expect for a storytelling platform and a platform that's designed to be meaningful in culture, we'll go to market. We'll go to the American people through culture. It'll be a very musical launch. So we already have produced and recorded an anthemic song by one of the most famous and prolific producers active in the music industry today. He's a bona fide hit maker. And by design, we're releasing this song through an open call to the American people. We're not trying to have a bunch of celebrities record the We Are the World of the 250th. We're really putting this out there to the people to make the anthem their own. We'll have, 100 plus popular creators across, all the musical genres putting their remixes out on the moment of drop in mid-June. And then there'll be an invitation to communities around the country for people to do their own version. Or, if they're not musically inclined, to nominate an unsung hero in their community whose story needs to be told. And then we'll roll it out, rather than trying to compete with any of the single big celebratory moments on the 4th of July. Over the summer, we'll roll it out at festivals all across the country. So what you could expect to find in, a town like Austin or Nashville is a music festival, kind of a civic street fair vibe that families can show up to, listen to music from one of their favorite creators or artists who will show up under the Be the People banner. And then this is where I say kind of civic street festival. There'll be booths everywhere. There'll be a join fair kind of model where your invitation is to go find a cause to get involved with. And by the way, here are all of the great organizations that are already active in your community. We'll hand them a passport. If you go to these booths and go take an action with these groups, you get swag and merch. And maybe a chance. Everyone loves swag and merch. They're going crazy for these things.
Our donors trust hats.
Yeah, they fly. We can't hang on to them. So it'll create that really kind of groundswell feel of a civic season. Celebration of the moment, but more importantly, our commitment from every American who participates to building that better future. And then we'll take it from there with the stories.
All right. Well, that'll be exciting. And it'll be nice to see it out there and live and floating. Okay. So final question. There's a lot of money behind this effort already. This show really is targeted at philanthropists across the board. So the cynic, again, coming through is where are philanthropic dollars actually best leveraged from kind of the general giver base,
Yep.
whether they be $100 or $100,000 or $100 million, where are they based in this effort? Are they giving to, is there a C3 they're giving to? Are they giving to their community? How are they using their philanthropy to help move this forward?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because we still got a ways to go. This is an ambitious effort, and it's going to take significant resources now and over the next 10 years to make it possible. And we're incredibly grateful to the dozens of individual partners who have made this possible, the incredible foundations who are stepping up, the MacArthur's, groups like Stand Together, who are taking some risks on the front end, but we're actually only a little over halfway towards our $250 million goal through 2026 for launch. You know, we benefit from the reach of the incredible partners in the National Leadership Council, and yet to break through the noise, there's going to have to be significant investment on the front end. That digital ecosystem takes investment to build, as it will service for the next 10 years. So there is an independent C3 set up to house Be the People that will drive the creative and the campaign and that digital ecosystem of tools and products and the platform of partnerships for the next 10 years, and invite everyone to consider supporting there. And I just want to keep coming back to what I hope is a thread that's come through this entire conversation. The beating heart of this effort is the work locally in communities. This all has to ladder up to a shared national story of who we are as Americans. We become the story that we tell. We need to make sure that the story of who we are from the 250th and beyond is in terms of what we build together and the problems that we solve together. That's important, but that actual work happens locally. It happens bottom up. It happens in communities, and philanthropists of all sizes across the country, we're inviting to lead in that local way. Tell us what's going on in your town and community that needs to be elevated through this platform. Help make your community a Be the People exemplar community. Connect us to the great organizations that are already doing exciting work there. A lot of ways we're not asking you to give differently. We're asking you to give in community with a group that can help make this a movement that shapes our future.
Well put. Well, I love it. It's a big idea. It's an exciting idea. And it's so important in this year that I don't want to see this celebration and this milestone get squandered and go to waste. And I want to see some momentum coming out of it. And so Be the People and the work we Stand Together is really important to that. Sarah Cross, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I really appreciate Sarah joining us. Appreciate our friends at Stand Together for letting us use this cool studio if you're watching us on YouTube. And, Stand Together is great because they think big. And this effort, this Be the People effort, is a great example of that. And so important in this time when it is going to be wonderful to celebrate the semi-quincentennial. But we got to keep that momentum going. We have to keep bending the curve on this divisiveness that we have in America. And I'm excited to see what Be the People and the myriad of organizations that are under that, ones that are familiar to you from your community, ones that are familiar to you through civics, et cetera. They're all involved in this whole part of it. And so can you. You can be a part of it as well, even without necessarily changing your giving habits, but nudging people to help bring these things together into this portal and to think bigger about how they can work together to change America. If you want to change America, that is what we help philanthropists across the country do at Donors Trust, and we would be thrilled to help you if we are not already doing so. Go to donorstrust.org, download some materials, send us a message. We'd love to have a conversation with you if you care about limited government, personal responsibility, free enterprise. That's what we do. That's what we care about, and we'd love to help you maximize the impact of your giving through that. Well, we have more great conversations coming up on so many topics where you as a donor can have an impact. So until then, thank you for being a giver. We'll talk more soon.